Hi, I'm going to demonstrate how to install SQL Server 2012 on a computer with a Windows 8 operating system. And I'm actually using a Microsoft Surface Pro, and the internal microphone on this computer is not all that fantastic, so you're probably going to notice that the audio quality of this video is not very good. That said, I tested this previously, and I know that although it's not great audio, it's still going to be clear enough for you to follow along. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is take a look at the software that's currently installed. So I have a shortcut to Programs and Features, which is one of the programs that you can access through the Start menu and the Control panel. So as I look at the installed software, you'll notice that Visual Studio 2012 or Visual Studio 2013, there is no installation of Visual Studio. That's the main thing I wanted to point out. So Visual Studio contains elements of SQL Server, and if it is installed prior to installing SQL Server, then SQL Server installation doesn't install everything properly. So the long and the short of it is, if you have a computer that has Visual Studio installed on it, you need to go through the Programs and Feature option in the Control panel and uninstall Visual Studio, and then make sure that when you do, there are no residual components of SQL Server. Okay, so if you see anything in this list that says SQL Server, after you've uninstalled Visual Studio, go ahead and uninstall it as well. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is go to the this PC, as it's known currently in this version of Windows. I'm going to go to this part of the operating system where I can see the disk drives that are available to the computer, and you'll notice that I have the SQL Server DVD in my DVD drive. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this program. Now, I should tell you, in fairness, I have not rehearsed any of this. I'm doing this cold, so from time to time I may make the wrong selection, and if I do, bear with me. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, let Microsoft Corporation have access to the operating system. And here momentarily I should see something going on here. Now, this computer, as small as it is, has a fairly fast processor and a lot of memory, so I expect this to go pretty quickly. Okay, so when I get to this first dialog, it wants to know whether I want to see the hardware and software requirements. This should be all right. So if it's questionable, you may want to check and make sure that the computer that you're using can install SQL Server. But again, in my case, this is a fairly new computer made by Microsoft with a Intel processor, and it's a fairly fast processor at that, and the computer has a lot of memory, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to go ahead right into the installation option, and I need to read these prompts because, again, I haven't done this in quite some time, so I need to refamiliarize myself with what's being asked. So it says new SQL Server standalone installation. Definitely not this option. Definitely not this option. And I'm not going to do an upgrade. This is a new computer, so it looks to me like this is the option I want to use. Okay, so new SQL Server standalone installation or add features to an existing installation. So I'm going to choose this option. I think I'm going to choose it there. only have one USB port on this, so I'm having to use the touchpad instead of my mouse. Okay, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to move the mouse pointer around a little bit. I'm also using a DVD drive that's connected through the USB port, so it might be a little bit slower than it would be if it were an internal DVD. And again, I'm going to have to pause here and read some of this, and just so the video doesn't get too difficult to follow along with, maybe I'll read some of this out loud. So, setup support rules identify problems that might occur when you install SQL Server setup support files. Failures must be corrected before setup can continue. Okay, so operation completed, password failed 0. That's my dog barking in the background. Humphrey, be quiet. So that all looks good. Humphrey. Quiet. Okay, so here we go. Please wait for Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Service Pack 1 setup, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I have a pre-pitted key. So the DVD that you'll be given is from the MSDN AA software license that we have, and you'll be getting this same DVD. So it's pre-pitted. I should be able to, let me read this prompt just to make sure. Validate the instance of this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think at this point, I just make sure that that pre-pitted key is selected and say next. All right, so at this point, Microsoft is holding me at gunpoint to accept the terms of the licensing agreement, and I'll agree. I sure hope they don't want updates, because I'm having problems with my internet connection right now. It's running very slow, and the service provider is supposed to send someone out next week to check the hardware. I have a wireless, I live out in the country, and I have a wireless broadband service. So from time to time the receiver may get slightly moved because of wind, and there's a grove of trees between me and the tower that the transmitter is on, and sometimes when the trees leaf out it affects things. So right now things are not calibrated very well, and if it's having to do a lot of checking on the internet here, then I could be in big trouble as far as doing this demonstration. I'm going to let this go for just a little bit, because I really do want to follow kind of the default process, but if it gets, too lengthy, it wasn't bad. Okay, so include SQL Server product updates. Whether to do this or not. 2 updates found online. The updates will be installed when you click next. What I'm going to do, just because of this slow internet access, is I'm going to uncheck this, and then I'll get the updates later when I have a faster connection. Okay, so in your case, if you're working from a high-speed internet connection, you would want to go ahead and let it do the updates. Okay, and I hit next. Sorry about the dog barking in the background. This is the third attempt that I've made to do this recording. I got phone calls during the previous two attempts and had to start all over again, so getting a little frustrated here with the way things are going. Okay, so install setup files. SQL Server will now be installed if an update for SQL Server setup is found and specified to be included. The update will also be installed. Alright, so I can hear the disk access from my DVD drive. So it's reading that DVD, copying all these files over. I haven't gotten this far previously, so I have no idea how long this is going to take. While I'm waiting on this to conclude, I should tell you that of all the software that I have installed, SQL Server is, if not the most difficult to configure, at least it's one of the most difficult to configure. So that's why I'm doing this video, in hopes that if you watch this, then you're going to be able to do this without a lot of frustration. Please wait while Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Service Pack 1 setup, blah blah blah. Alright, so Windows Firewall. Okay, operation completed. 6.0, one warning skipped. I'm going to read this warning and see whether I have to reconfigure the firewall. The Windows Firewall is enabled. Make sure the appropriate ports are open to enable remote access. See rules, document, add, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm just going to say okay to this. Okay. So since I'm not going to set this up on a network, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And since I got a warning, I don't think it's going to interfere with my installation. So I'm just going to go ahead and click next. Again, I'm installing this with the intent of just using this on my local computer, where my computer will be basically an all-inclusive platform, be both client and server. And since I'm not putting this on the network, sharing it with other devices, I think I'm going to be all right. Setup role. Click SQL Server feature installation option to individually select which feature components to install, or click a feature role to install a specific configuration. Let's see. SQL Server feature installation. Install SQL Server database engine. Want that. Analysis service, reporting services. Want that. Integration services and other features. All features with defaults. Install all features using default values for service account. I am going to go with the default option right here. Okay, so I think that's probably appropriate. Say next. Okay, now I'm going to have to read this and try to make sense of it. Okay. Instance features, database engine services, report services. I'm going to do this since I have plenty of space, and I hope this doesn't create a problem, but I'm just going to say select all. Okay, and obviously it's going to give me more than what I actually need, but nevertheless, since I don't know the details of the software installation that completely, hopefully I've got everything I need, and obviously more than what I need at this point. It's going to install this down the path of program files Microsoft SQL Server, which is the default directory, and that's fine. Okay, I don't know what I did, and I'm just going to say next to that. I think it understood next, yes. Okay, so we may be getting to the point where it's going to take a long time, and if so, then I'm going to stop the video rather than letting this go forever and ever. Let's see, setups running rules to determine if the installation process will be blocked. For more information, operation completed, pass 4. Okay, so all that looks encouraging. And I'll say next. Alright, so specify the name of an instance ID for the instance of SQL Server. Instance ID becomes part of the installation path. So on this, I'm not absolutely sure. I'm going to go with default instance, since this is my first instance of this software on this computer. Disk space checks out. Next. As slow as this is to respond, I'm never sure whether it actually picks up on my touchpad motion. Apparently it did. Okay, specify the service account and collation configuration. SQL Server agent. I'm going to go with all the defaults at this point. Okay, so I'm going to hold that screen just a little bit so you can look at it. So this is just going to start up things. I can't remember what SQL Server agent does, okay, but the other components, major components, are going to start automatically. And the main thing that I'm interested in would be database engine, reporting services, and possibly the server analysis services. And those are all going to start automatically, so that looks okay to me. Okay. It wants to know, this is always tricky to get this right. I got to remember what it is. I believe there's two types of security. Use Windows security, or you can use SQL Server security, or they can be used in combination, as I believe it would do if I choose mixed mode. So I'm going to choose mixed mode here, and that will give me the ability to use SQL Server security for development work. That works great. And I'm going to enter in a password, and I'm going to turn off that cap lock. I'm going to use a password of uppercase SQL 2012, and I don't know whether that's going to let me get by with that. Yes. I'm right in the middle of something. Hold on. SQL 2000. Oops. Confirming this. I get interrupted again. So try it again. Uppercase SQL 2012. And tell it next. There are validation errors in this page. Click OK to close the dialog box. Okay, doing something wrong. Great time to get interrupted. Let's see. Okay, so previously I had reached this point in the installation and encountered a bit of a problem not knowing what to do, and I had chosen mixed mode authentication mode so that I would be able to use both Windows and SQL Server security, and that part was fine. I did not respond to this bottom part down here where it says SQL Server administrators have unrestricted access to database engine, where I'm supposed to specify a SQL Server administrator, and apparently it wants a specific user of the operating system to be associated with SA. So I went ahead and chose add current user, and I have not tested it beyond this point, so I'm hoping that when I click next it's going to continue on and everything's going to go along its merry way. So I click next, and I'm not getting the error message, so let's see what's next. Analysis services configuration. I have not used analysis services, so I'm going to go ahead and add current user. Okay, so again, I think it's the same kind of thing where this is a role and it wants to associate a account with that role, so I'm just going to add current user, which is the user that I'm logged in as, and tell it next. Reporting services. Okay, so I have worked with this in a fairly minor way, but I intend to do a little more research with this and actually use it in class this fall, so I want to be careful how I go about this. Reporting services native mode installs and configures the report server in native mode. This report server is operational after setup completes. The other option, install only. Okay, reporting services SharePoint integrated mode, install only. I'm going to go with the defaults because I don't know exactly what I want, and that's usually, you know, the safe bet. So I'll say next. Okay, so distributed replay controller. No idea. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to go ahead and use the current user. So the current user of this computer has administrative capabilities. So I am the admin of this local computer. So every time I say current user, it's the local computer administrator. I'll tell it next. Well, this is interesting. Again, I've not used this feature. In fact, I wasn't even planning on using it. Specify the corresponding controller and data directories for distributed replay client. Specify controller machine name and working directory. I don't remember what this machine name is. Let me see if I can find that. And if I go to this again. If I go to this PC, right click, that didn't get me anything. I'm looking for properties. Properties, where are you? Didn't recognize that right click. I'm going to go back. Sorry about the confusion here. Let me try this all over again. This PC should be able to get a right click. There it is. Recognize the right click from this touchpad. Properties, and somewhere it should say here, name of this. Okay. So the computer name is Kuntz Surface, okay, right there. I think that's what it's wanting. Close that up. Close that up. Controller name, no idea. This is my best guess. Going with it, see what happens. Error reporting. Specify the information that you would like automatically to send to Microsoft to improve things. Send Windows and SQL Server reports to Microsoft. I'm going to leave that unchecked. That's just going to create some additional traffic on the internet for me. So if you want to report back any errors you have to Microsoft so they can improve their product, go right ahead. I'm leaving it unchecked. And it looks like everything in the configuration is clean. Okay, pass 7, failed 0, warning 0, skip 0, and try next. So my next option is going to be ready to install in installation progress. So this should move right along now. Okay, so here's a summary of everything. Ready to install SQL Server. It's going to install it down this path. Tell it to install. And this could take a little while. So at this point, I think what I'm going to do is stop the video, and then I'll have to splice together the very final part of this. Okay, so some time has elapsed now, and I've come back to my computer and found that the installation has completed. And if I look at the diagnostics, then it looks like all the components of SQL Server have installed successfully. Okay, that's a good thing. And I'm going to go ahead and close this dialog. And at this point, close up some of these windows so it's not so confusing. Alright, so here I am again, and I think I can close this dialog. Don't know why it's still open. It may want to do a reboot, I don't know, but nevertheless I'm going to try to start it up here. So if I go to the Start menu and look under All Programs, I should see Microsoft SQL Server 2012. And if I expand that, I am looking for, what am I looking for? Looking for Management Studio. Boy, I sure hope it installed. Let's see. There it is, right in front of my nose. I'm looking for SQL Server Management Studio. So this is the main administrative console window. And when it launches here, it's going to ask me to log in. Okay. So it attempts to log into the database engine. That's what I want. It wants to use the installed version on this computer. That's what I want. It will allow me to do Windows authentication. It will allow me to do SQL Server authentication. If I choose SQL Server authentication, it's going to ask for a login, and the account I want to log into is SA, and the password on this would be, if I remember right, SQL 2012, I hope, and then attempt to connect, and it allows me to log in. at which point then I can begin using it. Okay, so if I want to create a new database or something like that, then I would right click on the database folder, if I can get the touchpad to respond here, and new database and so forth. So I'm not going to test it completely, but I think it is working fine, and I'm satisfied with the installation, and I think the video now should be more than enough of a resource to help you install this on your own.